Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So bouncing off of an idea I had in Special Booster 1.0 where I talked about the 50 best commons and uncommons to pick up from Special Booster 1.0, I'm going to be doing that same type of idea here, except because Special Booster 1.5 is a slightly smaller set, there is a little bit less cards to talk about and I'm leaving out like hyper deck specific cards just because I'm trying to pick out cards that are like more generically good that can like go into literally almost anything. So here I laid out 40 of the best commons and uncommons that you could pick up in Special Booster 1.5. So going over the list, first up we have Kakkinmon. So Kakkiman is another black Digitama, so just him being another black Digitama makes him already a pretty standout card, just because we don't have a whole lot of black Digitamas, so he's definitely a really good card to be thinking about, especially since he has interactions with level 7s, and we already know that Black has been playing around with a whole bunch of level 7s, and basically has access to almost every level 7 in the game. So all that together just makes Kakkinmon a really good Digitama to be thinking about. Next, we have Demi Viman. So this is the BT-003 version of Demi Viman. I thought about the BT-021, but I think his ability isn't as good generically and is a little bit more deck specific. But the fact that we have another good Digitama that's basically doing something very, very similar to Upamon in the form of this Demi Viman is definitely really, really nice, just because drawing helps with the overall consistency of the deck. And the only change in the condition between this and Upamon is that your attacking Digimon needs to have jamming, but there's just so much jamming synergy and jamming support that it can still make this card relatively easily to start drawing cards relatively early and quickly. Next, we have Argomon. So Argomon as a Digitama is actually pretty decent because he rewards you for a lot of your aggressive plays, and he also interacts with the Digizorption ability. So the whole point of this card is when the Digimon he Digivolves into becomes unsuspended during your unsuspend phase, he's going to be gaining you a memory. And gaining that memory is definitely really, really good just because green is already a really hyper efficient color on how it's utilizing its memory. So having more memory just allows you to be even more efficient on your plays. And then on top of which, if you are playing a more aggressive style of deck, then you're just going to be swinging and Argomon's just basically going to be passively gaining you a memory every one of your turns. But if you utilize him with the Digizorption ability, you Digivolve him into like a rookie, and then you use that rookie that he's under to reduce the cost of your Digivolution, so that way when that Digimon stands back up, then you'll be gaining a memory that way. So there's just a ton of pretty good applications that make Argomon a really good Digitama. Next up, we have Minomon. So Minomon is another really solid Digitama for green to be playing around with, just because he has this when attacking ability that's not once per turn, where you will get plus 1000 DP if you're attacking into the opponent's Digimon. So a huge part of what green's trying to be doing is just attacking into your opponent's Digimon anyway, so Minomon just being one of the easiest ways to get the boost off of it definitely makes it a really standout card. Next, we have Demi Maramon. So Demi Maramon is just a really fantastic purple Digitama. Similar to Kakkinmon, purple just doesn't have a whole lot of Digitamas, so that already makes this a really standout card. And the fact that he has a very powerful on-delete ability is really, really nice, just because his on-delete ability allows us to draw one card and discard one card. So looting is just a very powerful ability to have, just because it is filling up your trash with selective cards, so that way you can pick and choose what you need to get rid of, when you need to get rid of it, and help set up your plays in the future, and you're still drawing cards, so you're getting through your deck faster than what you might normally do if you were trying to just mill out. Next up, we have Gigimon. So Gigimon is a really fantastic Digitama for red. Again, similar to all of the other reasons, we just didn't really have a whole lot of other good Digitama, but the fact that Gigimon adds this nice inheritable of getting a DP boost if the opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash definitely is really, really nice, because it's not super hard for the opponent to have 5 or more cards in their trash just by how the game might naturally progress, and the fact that this is just an easier to get DP boost than some of the other Digitamas that we currently had in red definitely make this a really good card to pick up and play. And then the last Digitama on the list is going to be Upamon. So yes, Upamon was in blue, now he's in yellow, and yes, this Upamon in yellow is allowing you to draw cards, and that's basically the primary reason why we want to run Upamon, is because he has this nice when attacking ability, where if we have a 3 or fewer security, then we get to draw 1 card. So it isn't hard to get to 3 or fewer security and maintain that threshold, so making sure that Upamon will always be drawing you a card is definitely really, really easy, and like I said, drawing cards is really, really good and really, really powerful, so that just makes Upamon probably the best Digitama for Yellow to be playing with. Next, on to the rookies, we have Veemon. So Veemon is pretty good just because he is a rookie with a inheritable skill in blue that's actually pretty decent. So blue doesn't really have a whole lot of rookies with decent inheritable skills, so the fact that Veemon has one makes him definitely a really standout Digimon, even though he does interact with unsuspending during the main phase, but still being able to do that isn't necessarily the hardest thing in the world for blue in a whole bunch of different decks, and on top of which, whenever you do that once per turn, you'll be able to gain a card draw from it. And as I mentioned before, card draw is just pretty good to have. So the fact that we have all of those on a new rookie for blue to be playing around with is definitely really good. Next, we have Argomon. So Argomon is a very aggressively statted rookie where it has a very low play cost and a very high DP. You're almost never going to be utilizing this set to Digivolve with. You'd rather just play it over Digivolving it almost 100% of the time. But the fact that you could utilize this in something like a Rookie Rush deck or a Digizorption deck is definitely really, really good, just because the high DP just helps it survive a little bit more than some of the other rookies in the game. Next, we have Terriermon. So Terriermon is basically acting the same as Chumon, except it has 1000 DP more, and it's in the color green. So Terriermon is really solid just because, again, locking the opponent out of it, gaining their memory outside of their tamer effects is really, really good just because it can help limit what they can do depending on the matchup. Next, we have Ghazimon. So Ghazimon is basically the purple equivalent of Terriermon, doing the exact same thing as Chumon, locking the opponent out of gaining memory, except by their tamer effects. Next, we have Biyomon. So this Biyomon is from BT2-002, and it's pretty good just because it's a very aggressive rookie where it wants to be deleted on your turn, and if it is, then you get to gain 1 memory. So if you just have this passively sitting on the field, you swing at their security, hopefully break the security, and then Biyomon will die, then you gain a memory, and then you could utilize that memory to extend some of your plays and make even more powerful plays happen. So Biyomon is just a pretty solid rookie for Red to be playing around with. Next, we have Salomon. So this version of Salomon is from BT2-002, and it has a really nice on-delete ability where if you have 3 or fewer security, then you get to recover 1. So this is a really decent rookie just because it allows you to try to potentially heal a little bit more efficiently than some of the other cards in the game, and that's just what makes Salomon a really decent rookie, just because of how easy it is to get to 3 and maintain 3, and Salomon just helps you maintain that 3. And the last rookie we have on the list is going to be Lotmon. So Lotmon is a really good rookie just because it has this really powerful on-play ability where you get to look at the top card of your security stack and then add that to your hand. And then if you added that card to your hand, then you also get to draw 1 card. So this is basically the equivalent of drawing 2 cards, but one of them is coming out of your security stack, so you are essentially taking a damage. But considering yellow can recover and yellow wants to be at that 3 threshold, it makes it very easy to get to that 3 threshold. And on top of which, you're still adding the cards to your hand, so it's not like the card is going to the trash where you can't utilize it. So Lotmon is just a really powerful card that also could be set up in a whole bunch of ways and is definitely a really good card to be thinking about. Next, on to the champions, we have Garurumon. So Garurumon is a really fantastic champion for Black to be playing around with, just because it has the security ability. So the security ability allows it to come out of the security for free as a Digimon ready for battle, and that's just really, really powerful just because having a surprise Digimon to come out of nowhere, you could utilize in some various different ways, where you could use it to start Digivolving up into a more powerful Digimon, and it's a great way to just start Digivolving right away, or you could use it as a really aggressive piece because it came out of the security and you're trying to push for game, and Garurumon just is a free Digimon that came out of nowhere. So this card is just a really fantastic card, even though the stats aren't necessarily super great, but it's still really, really good, on top of which it has the Garurumon name, so if there's any Garurumon synergy, then this card could potentially work with that. Next, we have Tankmon. So Tankmon is basically the Gorillamon for Black, where it's just a very aggressive and efficiently statted Digimon, where yes, you're probably never going to want to play it for its play cost, but the fact that it's another Digimon with a low evo cost makes it a really good card for Black to be playing around with, especially since its DP is going to be on the higher side. It also could be utilized as a little bit more of an aggressive champion than some of the others. Next, we have Argemon. So Argemon is basically the security Digimon for Blue, and as I mentioned before, security Digimon are just pretty good and pretty unique of an ability to have, so it's just an overall decent card to think about picking up. Next, we have Argomon. So Argomon is really decent just because he has this Digizorption ability. So essentially with Digizorption, you can reduce his evo cost to 0. So evolving into a champion for 0 is just really, really good. And depending on the other types of synergy and support that you pair him up with, you could utilize this Digizorption ability in various different ways. But just getting to evo up into Argomon for 0 is still pretty decent. Next, we have Gargamon. So Gargamon is basically doing the exact same things as Terriermon was doing in BT01, and having the redundancy in both similar stats and abilities just make this card really, really good, just so that you could see this ability more often than not, and you're not really losing any tempo for doing it versus Terriermon. The only real big difference is that this has 1 less play cost, and it has 1,000 less DP, but it's still a pretty good Digimon to think about playing nonetheless. Next, we have Flymon. So Flymon is pretty decent because this is the green security Digimon. This is probably the most least one that you're going to be utilizing out of any of the security Digimon, but it's still a good card to think about nonetheless. Next, we have Black Gatomon. So Black Gatomon is Purple's security Digimon, and I think I kind of just don't really need to say anything more, but Purple has the unique application of being able to utilize this card as sacrificial fodder because it just came out of the security out of nowhere, and it could make some potential plays possible just because it's on the field and you weren't necessarily anticipating it, and just having the extra Digimon means you could do so much more with it. Next, we have Minomon. So Minomon is, for the most part, the closest thing that Purple has to a Gorillamon, where it just has some very similar stats. It has a little bit lower play cost and a little bit lower DP, but you don't really care about that just because you like the evo cost for 1, making it a very good tempo tool. Next, we have Greymon. So Greymon is Red's security Digimon, and again, security Digimon are just pretty okay, just because of the unique applications that they have with security ability, and then on top of which, it is a Greymon, so if there's any Greymon synergy, then this card still works with those Greymon synergies. Next, we have Ankylomon. So Ankylomon is pretty good just because this is Yellow's security Digimon, except that Yellow has the unique application of recovering, so there is a higher chance that you're going to be able to put this card into your security or set this card up with your security, so that way it's going to be coming out more often. So that's just really, really good just because you have the ability to have a higher chance of seeing this in your security versus any of the other colors. And then the last champion we have is going to be Terriermon. So Terriermon is basically the Gorillamon for Yellow, just another solid tempo tool and a solid Digimon to think about for its stats. Next, on to the ultimates, starting with Biyomon. So Biyomon is really good just because it is basically the Gorillamon on the ultimate level, where it has some really powerful stats, but it has also a really low evo cost, making it a really good tempo tool. It's not exactly as good of a tempo tool as something like Monzimon, just because Monzimon has a lower play cost, but Monzimon also has lower DP, making it a little bit more accessible to different types of removal. So Biyomon having some higher DP with the same low evo cost definitely makes it a really good card to Digivolve up into, just because it could potentially survive more cards and be a slightly more aggressive Digimon. Next, we have Argomon. So even though this Argomon did get limited to 1, it's still a really powerful card to think about getting, just because of what this card is doing. So the first big thing about the card is it has Digizorption 3, so it basically can evo for 0 if you're utilizing the Digizorption ability, and then on top of which it has a really powerful inheritable ability, where when attacking, you get to play a level 3 green Digimon from your hand for free, but it comes in a suspended state. So this is just, again, another really good card to just tempo up into your mega levels, and it's still a very powerful Digimon to be playing, because it could also spit out Digimon too. Next, we have Rapidmon. So Rapidmon is acting similar to Bastimon, where it has this really low play cost, and unfortunately it doesn't have exactly as good of DP, but it's still pretty decent on the DP department, just because it has a lower play cost. And what you're really trying to utilize the card for is its inheritable ability, so that way you could gain some more DP on the ultimate level, and the ability is basically very comparable, if not the same, to Gargamon and Terriermon, so you're just really looking to gain some more DP to be able to beat up into the opponent's Digimon with. Next, we have Blossomon. So Blossomon is really good just because it's doing something very similar to Argomon, where it has this Digisorption ability to basically make its Digivolution cost free, and that's just really good to tempo up into your higher levels with. Next, we have Skullmeramon. So Skullmeramon is basically Purple's equivalent of Monzimon, and that's just really, really good for tempo just because it has a really low play cost and a really low evo cost, making it a hyper-efficient card to get into your higher levels faster with. Next, we have Lavogaritamon. So Lavogaritamon is basically Red's equivalent of Bastimon, where it has the exact same stats and all of the exact same purposes. And then lastly, we have Untitled, which is Yellow's version of Bastimon for, again, all of the same reasons. Low evo cost, high DP means it's pretty decent. Next, on to the Megas, we have Vikemon. So Vikemon is a really fantastic Mega to be thinking about playing on a budget, just because this is actually a pretty decent Mega. So what he's doing is he has a evo cost of 4, which is a little bit on the higher side, but that is coupled with the fact that he has 12,000 DP, which is pretty decent considering a lot of blue megas don't really have that strong of a stat line. And then on top of that, he even has his own ability, which makes him even stronger, where during your turn, while the opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play, then this Digimon gets plus 1,000 DP and Security Attack plus 1. So not only could he potentially hit for 13, which is really good considering blue doesn't really have a whole lot of self-buffs, or just buffs in general, but on top of that, he's also going to be gaining natural Security Attack plus 1, so this is just going to allow him to hit even harder and more consistent, and he's going to be able to clear more security checks just because that plus 1,000 is allowing him to hit over specific numbers. So that's just really, really good to be thinking about as just a solid Mega you could possibly play. And then the only other Mega that I felt was really worthy of being put on this list is Bacho Stigma. So Bacho Stigma is an absolutely insane Mega. He might not look like it at first, but once we get into his ability, then he really starts to shine. So his stat-wise, he's a little bit on the weaker side compared to a lot of Megas. He evos for 3 with 9,000 DP, so that's nothing really too special, but his abilities definitely make up for that with him naturally having Piercing. So when he attacks into the opponent's Digimon and deletes it and he survives, then he's also going to be performing a security check, so that's just really good at being able to deal damage to the opponent while getting rid of their Digimon all at the same time. And then on top of which, he even has a really powerful when attacking ability, where if you're attacking into an opponent's Digimon with 12,000 DP or more, then he gets a plus 7,000 DP and security attack plus 2. So bare minimum, he's going to hit 16,000 and do 3 security checks, which is absolutely insane for a uncommon Mega to be playing around with, and he's just a really solid Mega to be playing around with overall, just because a lot of the Megas that you're going to be having a hard time with are going to have 12,000 or more DP, and the fact that he can hit for such high numbers definitely means that he's a really good Digimon to consider playing with. And lastly, onto the option cards, so we have the Ray of Victory. So the Ray of Victory is a pretty good option card for blue just because blue doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of removal, let alone good removal. So this is a really nice card to utilize it because its main ability allows us to bounce one of the opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon back to their hand. And then it has the added benefit where if we have a blue tamer in play, we get to unsuspend one of our Digimon, which unsuspending our Digimon could trigger certain effects, or we could utilize it offensively or defensively, depending on how we play the card, how much memory we have, and when we want to play the card. And then on top of which it has a really nice security ability of activating its main effect, so it's just a pretty good card overall to think about using. Next, we have Hidden Potential Discovered. So even though this card did get limited to 1, it's still a very powerful card for green to be playing with just because of how efficient this card is. So it has a play cost of 0, so it's free to use whenever you feel like you want to use it. And then it has the really powerful main ability of the next time one of your green Digimon Digivolves this turn, you could suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the evolution cost by 5. So most of the time, you're just going to be utilizing this card to Digivolve your level 5s into level 6s, but we are in the future going to be getting level 7s that interact with green, so we could use this card to go from level 6 into level 7, and no matter how we utilize this card, it's still going to be a very, very good card, just because of how much tempo you're cheating with this card. And then it has the nice security ability of adding it to your hand. So even though we are running it at 1, the off chance it ends up in our security, we still are allowed to use it. Or if we just draw into it naturally, again, it's still just a really good card to think about utilizing. Next, we have Positron Laser. So Positron Laser is just another really powerful option card just because of what this card is doing. So its main ability is we get to choose up to 2 of the opponent's Digimon, and then they can't attack or block until the end of the opponent's next turn. So that already is just really, really good. Stun locking the opponent's Digimon, making them not be able to do anything, is just really powerful because we could use it offensively or defensively to just try to limit their options on what they can do. And then on top of which, it has an added bonus where if we have a blue Digimon in play, then we get to return one of their suspended Digimon to the owner's hand. So potentially we could mess with up to 3 Digimon with this card, and that's still just really, really powerful. Most of the time, you're not really going to be utilizing the secondary part to bounce something, just because most of the time, if you're playing this card, you're not going to be playing a blue-green hybrid deck, just because that's a little bit harder to do on a budget outside of Rookie Rush, but it's always nice to have it nonetheless. And then its security ability is almost the exact same thing as its main ability, except its security ability doesn't turn off their defensive capabilities, it just turns off their offensive capabilities for the turn. And then we still get the possibility of the bounce effect if we have a blue Digimon. So again, just another very powerful option card to think about picking up. Next, we have a Delicate Plan. So a Delicate Plan is a pretty interesting option card just because I don't necessarily think this is a highly rated option card because people just might not be thinking that its effect is good, but I think its effect is really, really good just because you are still afraid of the opponent's security, and this can help mitigate some of that worry. So what this card is doing is it has the main ability where one of your Digimon gains the ability of this Digimon. It doesn't activate the security abilities of option cards that are checked from this card. So this is just really powerful because it's acting basically like Wargreymmon's effect from BT-001, where he has this ability, except now you could extend this ability to basically any Digimon, and that's just really, really powerful, especially if you're hitting for multiple security. Then you are always going to be afraid that you're going to hit an option card that's going to ruin your day, so this could just mitigate that. And then on top of which, its security effect is adding this card to your hand, so it's still a pretty good card to have even in your security, just because you'll be able to play it when you feel like you're ready to. Next, we have Plasma Stake. So Plasma Stake is a really good option card just because this is basically almost the equivalent of Gaia Force, except not really. So what this card is doing is it has a play cost of 4, so it's a lot more efficient of a removal option than Gaia Force, but it's a lot more restrictive and a lot more limiting on what it could remove. So its main ability is we get to delete up to one of the opponent's Digimon with 13,000 DP or more, and then its security ability is activating its main effect. So the security ability is a lot better than its main effect just because if the opponent is DP boosting their Digimon, then it has a way more application just because if they're trying to hit over 12, then they're going to have to hit over 13, and if they check this card in the security, then it's basically acting as a Gaia Force in the security, getting rid of a large threat we can't deal with otherwise. But on our turn, this card is a little bit harder to utilize from our hand just because there's not a whole lot of Digimon in the game with 13,000 DP or more. So this is definitely a card that's better in the security than in our hand, but the fact that we could still deal with level 7s with this card is still really, really nice to think about as an alternative removal card to Gaia Force. And then the last option card on this list is going to be Eden's Javelin. So Eden's Javelin is another fantastic removal option for yellow because similar to blue, they just don't really have that great of removal options. So what this card is doing is, first, it's drawing us a card. So it's already replacing itself, and that's already pretty good. And then on top of which, we get to choose one of the opponent's Digimon and minus it 1,000 for each card in our hand. So depending on the yellow deck, you could start generating lots of advantage early on, and then you could use this card to just start cutting them off. And then the fact that it replaces itself already makes the ability a little bit more worthwhile, because at worst, you're always going to be minusing 1,000, and at best, you could minus like 8 or 9,000. And that's just, again, pretty good of a removal card for yellow to be playing around with. And then on top of which, its security effect is activating its main effect, so it's another card where it's really good in the security and also just really good if we just need to raw play it depending on how we play the game and what our hand is looking like. So for the most part, those are the 40 cards that I feel like are worth highlighting. Again, there's a whole bunch of really deck-specific cards that I didn't feel like highlighting just because I wanted this list to be more generically good, where these cards can just fit into any deck and you won't feel bad. So again, just keep in mind there are more deck-specific cards that I left out that you should totally pick up if you are planning on playing those decks. But again, these are cards I felt like we're highlighting that are just more generically good. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next video.